Hello people of YouTube and welcome to the Curiosity in Advance of 2024. For the very few uninitiated amongst you, Curiosity in Advance is a format where I ask myself questions one year, then answer them the year after, and ask myself more questions for the year that follows. We've also got a couple of questions from viewers from last year, which reminds me that before anything else I want to ask you, whoever is watching, to put a question in the comments below for me to answer a year from now. Thank you. In over a decade of doing this format, I think that might have been the quickest intro I've ever done. So, without further ado, let's dive in to the viewer questions from last year. George kicked us off with a bunch of questions, starting with which work project or accomplishment from the last year are you most proud of? When I first read this question, I immediately thought about a specific project, but really it has to be getting an office, doesn't it? And if not getting an office, then definitely having raked in enough work to be able to work together with other people. And which work thing has been the most difficult? There's one specific conversation with a specific client of ours that very much stands out to me. It was a particularly negative conversation that was a big bummer, but a necessary eye-opener to have. I'll leave the details of that between me and George though. Which was the most fun work thing? I'm gonna go into a specific job for this one, and it has to be the salmon farm job we are just about wrapping up at the moment I'm filming this. Because it had all of the good things. It had travel, filming on location with actual cameras, it had 2D animation and motion design, it had 3D animation, it had fish. What more could you wish for? Then where next with work? Either stonks and or profit. No, but the real answer beyond just wanting to keep it growing is that I would love to get into some of our own creative projects, particularly the Sleipnir project really speaks to me and I want to get to it. But honestly, anything that's on that list, I would love to start getting to a bit more seriously in the next year. Len asks, what is the biggest change in yourself or in your life that sort of came by surprise but had a positive impact? Now, I know I've talked about work a lot already, but I'm gonna keep talking about it throughout this whole video because work has kind of been the big upward spiraling, ever getting better thing this year. Like if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I have an office or employees, I would have definitely said no. But in literally just a year, we've gone from barely paying ourselves to barely paying ourselves and having an office and a third full-time partner and having had a part-time employee at the start of the year. And we are currently in the process of onboarding a second part-timer. So a lot of stuff to be proud of there, and it's all going onwards and upwards. Liz asks, more doggos, question mark, question mark, question mark. I do hope so. And as I said in the comments last year, not yet. It's a little bit too early. It's probably about, I want to say 2 or 3 years too early to be asking that question. But feel free to ask it again in the comments of this video, and I'm happy to be proved wrong next year. We'll see. Kevin asks, tell us about a new activity you've discovered in 2024. I don't know if you'd call either motorcycle camping or solo camping really new activities I've discovered as such, but 2024 was the first year that I actually did them after having wanted to do those things for a couple of years before. This was the first year I just about scraped together the right amount of gear to actually go out and camp on my own. And I went car camping on my own, albeit with Saga the dog, and motorcycle camping together with Frank, and motorcycle camping on my own. So that's 3 sort of outings of that nature, and I really want to do more of it. Also, I did some jewelry making this year, which I'd never done before, and I probably won't do much of again, but it was kind of fun. Signa dove up a little bit of blackened wood from the Mediterranean Sea, and as soon as I saw it, I thought to myself that that would make for a really cool pendant for a necklace. So I kept it, took it back home, made a pendant for a necklace out of it, and gave that to Signa for her birthday. So a bit of a one-off, but a fun new activity either way. Lisa asks if I'm up for a visitor in 2025, and to that the only thing I have to say is fuck yes. I very much agree that 10 years is too much time between visits, and unfortunately us visiting Australia is very high on the bucket list, but very low on the priorities list. So it's probably not going to be me coming over to your side of the world anytime soon. So if you're still planning on heading back to Europe in 2025, our door is very much open. I probably already said this to you, Lisa, but for everyone else's context, Lisa was the first internet friend ever to come visit me in real life. And the, for lack of a better word, success of Lisa's staying at our house, not being an axe murderer, which probably made my dad quite happy. All of the positivity around that visit sort of kick-started a whole era of my life of going to visit internet friends and having internet friends come over to my house. And I'm really grateful for that. And I don't think I've ever said that before. So thank you for kick-starting that era of my life. And I think that's it for the viewer questions of last year. So once again, please put some of your new questions for next year in the comments below. And let's move on to the questions I asked myself in the last year. So, 28-year-old Tom, have you actually moved to the south of Norway? Yes, we moved to the south of Norway in July of 2024, and we are currently living in the house that used to be Signe's grandparents, now is Signe's dad's, and it is a temporary living solution. We are saving up for a purchased house of our own, because we would love very much to stop yeeting money into the void of rental houses sooner rather than later, thank you very much. And savings-wise, we are sort of starting to get to the point where we can actually start looking. So one of the first things to do is in January or February is go to the bank and talk about mortgages and that sort of thing. And then we can properly start looking at houses in the area, which is kind of wild because that is sort of the next big phase of our lives that Signe and I have been moving towards since Signe got out of university. Did you sell your Honda CRF 250L and get a Royal Enfield? And just to tack on a little bit extra, have you ridden anything else of interest? I'm guessing you'll have at least tested Frank's new Bonneville, but last year you also went and rented a Honda Grom, a Honda Monkey, and you test rode a Husqvarna Svartbilen 401. So is there anything else you've ridden? No, and basically no. I did try Frank's Bonneville twice, one time before he took the catalytic converter out of it, and once after he took the catalytic converter out of it, which made it all sort of nice and rumbly and more torquey. And that bike is just really, really wonderful. It's a little bit more powerful and hefty than what I'd want for myself at the moment. Broadly speaking, very comfortable, powerful but not intimidating, and just very confidence inspiring. And the reason that I still have the bike that I already had is basically just the answer to the previous question. We've been saving for a house very, very hard, and that's gone quite well, but my own savings account for hobbies and fun stuff has been trending downwards since I got laid off a year and a half ago. So the whole thing is a very mixed bag. I love that we are almost ready to buy a house for ourselves, and once we do, that should make our broader financial situation easier. But I would have also very much loved to have been able to sell my Honda CRF 250L and get something in return that is slightly bigger, faster, heavier, more travel-worthy. That said, I still really very much love my Honda CRF 250L for what it is, which is light, playful, very unintimidating, great on gravel roads, and just a wonderful tool for exploring the local area. So I can sit here and complain about materialistic things all I like, but if I actually take a breath and think about it, my situation isn't half bad. How do you like that weird little tree tent you bought? And did you get to use it much? Okay, so here's some actual thoughts on this live from the field back in August. Welcome to my first ever solo motorcycle camping trip. For the first time ever, I'm gonna try having my tree tent set up on the ground with the ground conversion kit. Setting that up took me probably an hour and a half, which I know seems absolutely ridiculous. Some of the usability things about this whole thing have been, I want to say disappointing, because they're just frustrating to work with. All right, voiceover Tom taking over for a moment. The crux of it is that the core structure of the tree tent is brilliant. It just gets literally all of the details wrong. The pegs are terrible, the guy lines are terrible, the way it mounts to trees is terrible, and a couple of these things I've already fixed, but there's a couple more things that need fixing still. So as much as I like it a lot and it's a comfortable night's sleep, it is basically always a frustration to set up. What is the status with Bigger Feet Productions, and have you been able to visit George and work together in Linköping for a bit? I basically talked about all of the work things already, the office, the colleagues, having enough work to do. It's all very pleasant, but the one thing I haven't really touched on, because I knew that this question was coming, was the visiting George part, which happened 3 times, which I'm pretty sure is much more than I foresaw last year. The first time was in May, when George and I did a little bit of work, some camping, and quite a lot of talking about the future. The second time was in September, when George had just gotten the key to our office and we went to various IKEAs and thrift stores to plunder all of the furniture that they had. And the third time was in November for our official office warming party. Have you done any new furniture building? No, I have not, and all of the reasons for that have to do with our current living situation. First and foremost, the house that we are living in right now is basically furnished, so we don't really have a need for more furniture. And as much as I do actually want to do more furniture building because it was really fun and rewarding, there's no money for it right now for all of the reasons I've mentioned above / before. We're saving up for a house, so I'm not going to buy lumber. Just an overarching language one. How's your Norwegian going right now? And have you picked your French back up? The Norwegian is going, I want to say fine, but it's actually, I think, going better than fine, because without really having noticed it over the last year, I've gotten a lot more conversational again than I have been the year before. I would really like to attend a class or an advanced course of some description to improve my Norwegian further. But the point about there not being any money for motorcycles and furniture stands here as well. I don't really have the money to do a course, so I'm not doing it right now. But maybe next year, after we've bought a house. And pivoting to French, I'm also kind of thinking of doing a French course at some point, but that would be much more at the beginner level, because I do at this point have a 270-day streak in just French on Duolingo, which is very satisfying. But that hasn't gotten me anywhere, really. I can start to put words together and make very basic sentences, but I can't have a conversation or read anything particularly advanced. So it'd be really cool to do some practicing with other people of that at some point. Speaking of French, and for the 3rd year in a row, have you been able to visit France finally and have that baguette and that croissant that you so deeply crave? Indeed, I have. Signe and I joined Signe's mom and Signe's mom's husband to their apartment at the Mediterranean coast this summer. And it was genuinely just about the most relaxing week I've had in probably years. It was hot, but not heatwave hot. There was beach, there was pool, there was nice French food, most important of which French breads of various types. So what more could you want from a week in France? And of course, as always, what have been the most memorable moments of 2024. There's always a lot of recency bias when trying to compile the list of most memorable moments of the last year, because obviously the most recent stuff sticks the best. And this year around, I started compiling the list while I was sitting at Schiphol airport after the most hectic November of my life. So there was a lot of very fresh memory buzzing about my brain and barely anything from before the summer. But there are a couple of things, starting with one of the saddest things of the year, which was attending the funeral of someone who died way too young. As per usual, I will leave the details of that between me and the people who already know about it, but yeah, that was genuinely very sad. Another bummer, though on a completely different level, was getting struck down by COVID right at the moment that I was supposed to go to the Netherlands and help shoot a documentary, but couldn't because I was literally stretched out on the sofa with a 40-degree fever and no sense of smell. And then we go on to a nicer memory, which is having camped with George in May. George has a very specific spot that he likes to go camping in because basically no one ever comes there, which the reason for that became very obvious to me very quickly because we had to slog through this much water to get to it. But once we were there, it was great. The weather was just about perfect. We had a fire going, we had nice food going, and it's just sort of super tranquil. Not to mention, great place to talk about the future of our business. Then more camping in the form of my first solo camping trip, again, albeit with Saga the dog. And then coming back to exactly the same spot with Signe and Saga together the weekend after. It's a really nice little remote camping place close to Trondheim. Then a memory that I objectively know is a real mixed bag, but I'm sort of looking at it through rose-tinted glasses, which is the part of the move that was riding my motorcycle down from Trondheim to Tønsberg. The reason it's a real mixed bag is because we took it over 2 days, and the first day of riding, it rained constantly. It just didn't stop. There was this perpetual drizzle that entire day. So I left, got soaked, got cold, and arrived at the campsite in Lillehammer still soaked and cold. The only redeeming factor about the first day was the fact that I had installed heated grips on my motorcycle before. So as much as my winter riding gloves, which I had to wear in June, were soaked, at least they were warm. It was a little bit like riding with warm washcloths wrapped around my hands, which is not the most pleasant way of riding a motorcycle, but if my hands were going to be wet, at least wet and warm was not the worst way it could have gone. The second day of riding, I did have decent weather, although it was a little bit more windy than I would have liked on my little lightweight motorcycle. But the highlight of that day was a hamburger I had at a gas station, which beyond the regular beef patty and some tomato and lettuce, was filled with literally every variety of onion you can imagine. It had fried onion rings, pickled onion, onion jam, raw onion, and fried onion. It was truly ludicrous, honestly, but delicious. Then during the summer, maybe one of the most memorable things is that Signe's mom and Ture came to visit me and Signe in Groningen, so my hometown, when they were driving up back from France to Norway. Signe and I had flown up, so we were a day earlier than them. And the day after, they arrived, stayed at my dad's house for a night. We went for a walk in the city and went out for dinner. It was really nice, but also a little bit weird because they were sort of out of context in a way. None of Signe's family has been to my part of the world, if you will, before. So they were the first. And it was kind of strange, but really nice, and I hope I get to do more of that with more of Signe's family going forward, because I'd like them to see where I'm from. Finding 5 electrically raising desks at the upcycling part of the IKEA in Linköping, which took our office from barely furnished to literally ready to have 5 people working in it. It was such a lucky find, because George and I weren't planning on going into IKEA at all, because we thought that there wasn't going to be anything there within our budget. And then I had to go in for something small like batteries or an extension cord or something of that nature. And I was like, just to have all of our bases covered, I should have a look around the corner in their upcycling store. And there were just 5 desks there for remarkably cheap. And the best thing was that when we told the sales guy there that we wanted all 5 of them, he basically threw in a bigger non-raising desk. So now there are 6 real desks at our office, even though there's only 2 people working there regularly. It feels much more officey than it would have otherwise. And then on the topic of our office, the office warming party late November was just really, really fun. I am far from the biggest party person or the biggest networker in the world, but I legitimately had a really good time being proud of our office and our work and talking to all the nice people that came, and just made me feel really optimistic about where all of that is going. And then, because I can't help myself, a last motorcycle one, which is I took my mom to the Royal Enfield dealer in the Netherlands. Not actually really for myself. I'm trying to get my mom back into motorcycling because she has a motorcycle license but hasn't used it in like 20 years. And I think Royal Enfield, with its light, low power, chill motorcycles, would be just the perfect way back into the world of motorcycling for her. And she seems very keen on it, actually, because she talked to a sales guy for half an hour about what her options were. So I've got my fingers crossed for my mother to go back into motorcycling in the next year or 2. I think that'd be hilarious and real fun, and I would love to go motorcycling together with my mom. That'd just be such fun. So that is it for the viewer questions and the questions I've asked myself last year. Let us ask me some questions that I can answer a year from now. So question number 1 is the very obvious big one. Have you bought a house? Question 2 is, what does your work situation look like now? Has it grown as fast as in the last year? Have you done any more solo and or motorcycle camping trips? How many kilometers have you ridden on your motorcycle? Because this year it was about 6,000, which was more than the 2 years before. But I still think we can top that. Are you still riding around on your Honda CRF 250L? The only reason I'm asking this question again, even though I'm not especially optimistic about the answer, is that Frank and I have the goal of doing a motorcycle road trip down the coast of France and into Spain in 2026. August, if I remember rightly, because there is a full solar eclipse that's going to pass exactly over the north of Spain. So even though I really don't want to do that on a little 250cc dual sport. I would love to do that trip on a bigger, more travel-worthy motorcycle. So to make that happen and make me feel confident about it, I really do need to have switched motorcycles by the start of 2026. Did you do any actual language courses? And of course, the usual at the end, what are the most memorable moments of 2025? And that is gonna do it for the Curiosity in Advance of 2024. The one we're doing next year will be the last one I'm doing in my 20s, which is kind of odd to think about. We've been at it a while, and I'm still enjoying it very much. I hope you are too. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to put some of your questions in the comments below, and I'll answer them next year. Ciao.